Happy 2023 from the Big Swing podcast, the home of inspiring, behind-the-scenes business stories from the world's leading content creators. My name's Sam Barcroft, and I started my media company back in 2003 from my bedroom in Tottenham. After 16 years, I sold it, I bought a farm, and settled into the next stage of my life. And these days, I'm helping out other entrepreneurs to scale their businesses. And so I'm tracking down the most inspiring media pioneers, the best in the business, and I've founded Creatorville to share their insights with you. So subscribe to my newsletter at creatorville.co and join me here on the Big Swing podcast as each week I ask a super producer to reveal the 3 most important decisions they've made in their quest for success. And at the end, I'll let you in on my personal top takeaway from today's very special guest. Welcome to the Big Swing. Now let's face it, 2022 was pretty grim in the media, and the outlook for 2023 is tough too. But we're entrepreneurs, and if there's one quality that we all possess, it's resilience, that perseverance born of passion, the secret sauce that drives us all on to succeed because we know our ideas are good, our teams are talented, we have to share that good stuff with the world. And no one exemplifies those qualities more than today's special guest, Tobi Oredein. If you haven't heard of her, then you soon will, because Tobi has built from the ground up the UK's most popular multimedia lifestyle platform, especially for Black British women. She started from nothing, a super successful, super focused subscription media platform. Thousands of women pay BLACK BALLAD every month for access to their amazing articles, to watch their brilliant videos, and to be invited along to their awesome in-person events. Subscription is one of the toughest nuts to crack as a media business, and Tobi has advertisers and brands queuing at her door wanting to reach her community, her audience at BLACK BALLAD. We all know how tough it is to be an entrepreneur, but to be a working class woman of colour, Tobi had the cards stacked against her from the start. But the beauty of doing it yourself is you don't need much to get started, and Tobi's drive and focus were evident from early on. Even as a kid, she had a clear sense of what she wanted to become.
I've always wanted to be a journalist. I was the kid in school that grew up like with her head in like magazines. I asked my dad for a subscription to Cosmo Girl when I was like 12 or 13 as a birthday present. That's all I wanted, because I had made my mind up that I wanted to be a journalist at 12, 13. There was nothing else I wanted to do. I used to mimic how I used to write. So I'd like get paper, think about what was going to be like my big feature, and then like they used to have like confessions opening up like at the beginning of the magazine, and then towards the back was the beauty pages. So I really acquainted myself with what does magazine format look like through Cosmo Girl. I was 12 and 13 in like the early noughties, so magazines were so far behind from what they are now. Media was so unrepresentative. I think something clicked in my mind that something was wrong when I was reading the beauty pages and there was never any Black women there, never, ever. And then one time they said, oh, we've got this feature on women of really dark skin. And I'm not even the darkest Black person you're going to see, right? So, and it was Jennifer Lopez. And I was so like really confused at 12, 13. I was like, what? Like, and it's always stuck with me. I was like, that's really strange. And do you know what? I just kind of dusted it off because I was like, that's really weird because she's not as dark as me, and I have friends that are darker than that, and just as beautiful. And then growing up, I started to think that, okay, I want to be a journalist, but I really wanted to write for me. What do I want in my life? And then I started to realize as I got older that race was, a big component of being a Black woman. Ended up getting some journalism work after I graduated from university in 2011, but I was a freelancer, and lack of stability was really challenging for me as a person. I never moved schools. Like my best friends are the same best friends I had since I was 11 years old. I have routines. So I had such an unstable career, and it probably sent me into probably like a deep depression actually, because I just couldn't get a job. I was working in a journalism house, and I remember their team for this, like their most sought after women's magazine that everyone will know. I saw them in a room and they all walked past and they was all very thin. They looked like clones of each other. And it started to click in my mind that I didn't look like that. There was just so many things as I was trying to get full-time jobs where it was like I'd be in an office one day and I realized I didn't look or I didn't sound. I come from a very working class background as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that journalism has such a problem, not with just race, but class, because, you know, you have to be able to work for free.
I'd love to pick up on that, right? Because one of the things I admire about Black Ballad is how public you are about the fact that everybody gets paid for 100%. Everything that gets done. And in the early noughties in magazine journalism, especially in the UK, there was an expectation, right? That you showed up, one would have to beg for a position, at which stage they would basically put you into a survival test where you're expected to show up, work for nothing for as long as they could basically string it out. How did you feel about that?
It caused a lot of tension at home. My mum's working class, so it's always been, you work to feed the family, you know, like you do a budget and you just about have enough to survive. So then I was the first person to go to university in my house. And then your parents have such expectations that, oh my God, my daughter's going to university. We've never had this experience. I come out and I'm not even getting paid. What should you go to university for? And get in debt. And it was kind of like my mum just didn't understand. And I remember it really affects your ego. I worked for a publication and I took my own lunch, didn't get travel, didn't even get expenses in them days. And people made you feel like it was a privilege for you to be there. And I'm lucky we live in East London and we live right next to like the district line. So it was really easy for me to get on a train. It wasn't that expensive. And I used to have to work a part-time job. So I actually used to have to work on Saturday and Sunday and some evenings to work for free. You get spoken to like trash as well. And you just think this is normal. You think that they're weeding out like who can handle this. But you start to realize it goes on for as long as possible. And then the other thing that you start to realize is that the people that get the jobs are the people that actually know people outside of the workplace. It's very rare that you come in as an intern and then you get that job like 3-6 months on. It takes a far longer time, and you start to realize you're not going to break in as a full-time journalist, and it's demoralizing, if I'm honest.
It should come as no surprise that Tobi could no longer tolerate the repeated injustice that she was experiencing trying to get into journalism. Sooner or later, something had to give.
I had applied for a job, actually, for a publication, and I didn't get it. I know I was overqualified because my mentor at the time said, this is a massive step down for you to apply for this job. I didn't get it. And I actually rang the editor to get some feedback. And she basically said, I didn't look at your CV. Not going to lie, I just didn't look at it. And I phoned up my best friend and I said, I kid you not, I will never be applying for another job and I'm going to give myself a job. And that was the day Black Ballad was born. I just said I had enough. I'd had enough of the journalistic process that was so unfair, so unkind, that just didn't really get. I don't know if I can swear on the podcast, but
you can say whatever you like, Tobi. Yeah.
It just doesn't give a fuck about talent. It's about who you know. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you really have to have self-belief and an ego in a healthy way. You have to really believe in yourself in a way that you have to be able to bet on yourself when no one will bet on you. I feel like also being a Black woman and being often the only Black woman in these newsrooms, I felt that I had experience that no other Black female journalist in the country at that time probably had, being so young. I'd worked in a lot of publications. When you look at my CV, so I'm going to gamble on myself. I said, I'm going to give myself a job.
And so it's time for Tobi's first big swing. She decided to take her future into her own hands. She knew that Black British women were not well served by the established media, and she knew she had the skills to put together compelling content just for them. Not only that, but she also had a partner in Bolla who had the technical skills to set up and run an internet-native media platform. So, what did she have to lose?
I think sometimes the best decisions in life are born when you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. I actually got a position at a publication and I got it taken away. They changed their minds.
No.
Yeah, about a month beforehand. And I also just felt for my own mental health. And at the time, mental health wasn't even a conversation then, but I realized something wasn't quite, I felt like a heavy pressure. And I was like, I can't even keep getting myself back up off the floor to mentally prepare for interviews. But as I said, there was that confidence. I knew I could write. I knew I had good ideas. So why can't I make it work? And I think that's the beautiful thing about this digital age. It lowers the barriers and it evens the playing field. Someone like me, who's a working class Black woman who lives with her mum in East London, I don't come from money, so I can't have my mum as my financial backer to start up a magazine on a whim. But what I do have is I have access to the internet. I had access to very talented friends and colleagues I met along the way to start something.
Tobi gave herself just 8 months from inception to launching Black Ballad. Everything was a hustle. The team decided to have their editorial meetings after hours in her old university because the PIN codes on the doors hadn't been changed. Despite this, Black Ballad was a huge success, which only accelerated when Tobi started writing a weekly newsletter to add to the content that was available on the website. More than anything, it was the newsletter that really underscored for Tobi just how engaged her audience was.
I think it made me realise that good media is a conversation. Good media creates a feeling. Good media captures moments. And no one was capturing Black British moments. No one was capturing the moments that meant so much to Black British women in the media. And I think that's what the newsletter taught us. It allowed us to have this relationship with this audience that was direct.
Why did you kind of and ah over it?
Just didn't want to do the extra work. I'm being honest. Yeah. It was like I was working part-time 2 days a week, and then I'm freelancing for all the major publications. And then I'm editor, you are running events, you are building a community. You hear good entrepreneurs that they're delegating, right? And I'm here taking on more and more work. But I soon found that it became essential to the identity of Black Ballad and this community. And today, I've written over 200 newsletters.
Wow. That's a lot of extra work, Tobi.
It is, especially when you do it on a Sunday night. Now, with 2 kids, it's very different trying to write.
I can barely put myself to bed on a Sunday night, let alone a newsletter.
There's been times I've written it with my daughter or my son's been on my chest and I've just written. And I am so grateful to have that relationship with this audience. And also the newsletter is, first and foremost about the relationship with this community.
Having worked so hard to build an audience and to create her special connection with them, Tobi now faced the financial reality of having to test her community's loyalty. To turn the platform into a functioning business, she decided to put the website behind a paywall. Now, readers would have to pay to access Black Ballad.
I spoke to my journalistic hero who said, "Don't do it." and I was like, oh my God, I could be making the worst decision ever.
How did you get to a position where you decided you wanted to make it a subscription website? Because we all know, having been in the industry, that is probably the most difficult thing to do for any editorial product.
We basically met with some brands and agencies and they just was like, your audience is not big enough. Black people make up 3% of this country and advertising is about scale. We were never going to get those contracts. And we were constantly reading around, how do you make money? How do you make money from media? We was constantly reading around it. And one of the things that Bola and I both kept coming across was that if you have not a niche, but a focused audience, because niche implies that we are small. And when you think about actually the demographic of Black women and, Black people on a global scale, we are not actually the minority. So we were like, okay, if you're a focused audience, you can make a subscription product because you're doing everything for this one audience. They should want to give you money because you're specifically talking about them. And also, we had a really small community, but we had a really engaged community. It was like everything that we put out, people were responding to. Every article, every social media post. And we were like, well, if people are responding like this, I remember the first event we did sold out really quickly. Our events would sell out quickly. We just had this amazing relationship.
And that's very unusual, isn't it, in the media to have that level of early engagement when people are actually transacting, they're spending their money with you when you're giving them the chance. What would have happened if you hadn't gone subscription, Tobi?
If we hadn't gone subscription, there'd be no Black Ballad.
And did you realise that at the time? Were you kind of sitting there thinking, again, like your previous decision, which was I'm never going to do an interview for a full-time job ever again? Were you like, we can't do anything else? Or did it feel like a 50-50 in the moment?
It was very much do or die.
Did that make it easier to just go for it?
It didn't. If we didn't do it, we couldn't carry on because we had no income. We'd only been going for 2 years, but 2 years is 2 years, right? And I didn't want to lose that. I didn't want to lose this audience. And I knew how much it meant to Black women to be seen and to be heard and to have their identities represented. And I think I was really scared of failure because I had failed to get a job in traditional media. I didn't want to fail again at something else that was media related. And I didn't want to fail at my dreams. I'm going to be honest. I didn't want to fail at my dreams. So I was really nervous because I was like, oh, if I do this and it works, we possibly have a business. And if I do this and it doesn't work, my dreams of being a journalist are probably over. So it was quite hard in terms of like it being so do or die. But it worked out. And I remember the absolute euphoric feeling of knowing that your business is going to live. And it's more than just getting the money in. It's knowing that like you thought there was an audience, you now know there's an audience because people have now paid for this product.
Vindication, Toby. You know in your gut that it should work, but you had to take that swing to find out if it would work.
Yeah. And it's so strange in terms of you plan so long for, for this campaign, and then you get there and then you have the feeling of responsibility of like, oh shit, now I've really got to make it work, right? Because people have paid for it. I call myself a reluctant entrepreneur. I've never ever wanted to work for myself. I've always been like, give me a job. And I think it was the first time I said, I might actually be able to be an entrepreneur, like I think I might be able to do this. And I think it was the beginning of me leaving the journalism title behind on a personal level.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like what you're saying is you wanted to be a journalist, and Black Ballad to that point was facilitating your kind of career as a journalist.
Yes.
Then at this point, you kind of were transitioning to being a media entrepreneur.
Yes. Couldn't I say it better myself?
Tobi raised 12.5k when she turned Black Ballad into a subscription website. She successfully managed to convince her community that Black Ballad's content was worth paying for, but it wasn't enough. To survive, they'd need to raise hundreds of thousands from seasoned investors.
I'm going to be really real. If Bola and I were white entrepreneurs, we would have raised at the 12,500 point because we would have validated the idea.
Yeah.
That's when we would have ideally raised. We read the stats and it weren't looking good for Black entrepreneurs.
And what year is this, Tobi?
God, that's 2016, 2017.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it was non-existent to be a Black founder and get money, let alone be a Black female founder that's the CEO. We literally looked at each other and said, for us to raise money, it's not possible. So we said, forget it. We'll just bootstrap.
And what changed in between that period of time?
A man called Carl Marsden. He was formerly the commercial director at the Stylist Group. I think that was his former title. And we met him and was telling him about Ballad. He said, sounds great. It's like, you need money. For two people to be doing this, you're never going to scale up. He was like, you need money. You need a salesperson. He was like, and they're not cheap. And he really talked us through. And I think the validation, I'm being honest, of a white man saying that, you should raise and like this has potential. It changed my thinking. And some people may say that's a bit sad, but it's the reality of my situation. Because even being working class, I didn't even know how like investors are in like another world. I was like, how do you even meet people? Like, I didn't even know where to begin. And even the networks that I had, they had no idea, because even if they weren't working class, they weren't in that world. That world is so far removed from the ordinary person.
To help, Tobi enrolled in a course at her old university specifically designed to mentor entrepreneurs through the fundraising process and to introduce them to potential investors. But of course, ordinary life doesn't stop. And 1 month into her raise, Tobi discovered she was pregnant.
I hid my pregnancy for as long as possible when I was talking to investors. From 2019, my daughter was born in 2020. We finished our investment round actually in 2021. And I closed all legal documents for this raise when my daughter was about 1.5 and I was pregnant with my son.
That feels to me a sad indictment of where we are as a kind of society. If you as a once in a generation brilliant founder are sitting there feeling you have to be somebody different.
An investor, it was actually a woman. She said to me, I really want to invest. I love it. But she was like, what if you get pregnant? And I was pregnant at the time. And I was thinking, if a female investor's asking me that, people have to remember, I actually use my maiden name professionally because I've also had the whole thing of, oh, she's just the wife, because my business partner's my husband. So I use my maiden name professionally. I literally just said, I'm pregnant. And I saw her face.
And did she invest, Toby?
She didn't invest in the end, but I saw the concern and I saw the worry. And I thought, if that's how a woman's going to react, I don't even want to think about what men are going to think. And men are predominantly in the investment space.
It's a very male space, for sure, yeah.
So I just said, to make this investment journey easier for me to have, a nicer pregnancy as well, it's just a piece of information that I'm not going to disclose until asked. And I don't think it's dishonest. I'm entitled to a private life. And that's how I just looked at it, to be honest.
And you did it, Toby. You had to do things that maybe people wouldn't want to have to do, that felt probably uncomfortable and frustrating and unfair at the time. But I remember watching you bust through your target, and I was so excited for you guys, because it's what you deserve, for sure. I mean, how much did you raise in the end?
Just under a quarter of a mil we raised.
Amazing.
So it still to this day, it's probably my proudest achievement as an entrepreneur, because there's always this talk about how for Black families, our generational wealth isn't as established as the white community in Britain. So this was an opportunity as well for, Black women, Black people to hopefully extend that wealth and to make it go round, that pound go round. And we keep talking about a seat at the table. We're not asking for a seat at a table. We're building this table. Every leg on it and every seat that sits at it is what we've built. And I haven't built that alone. I've built that with my team, and I've built that with over 1,300 Black women who have invested anything from £14 to £5,000 in this business. And I am beyond proud of that. And I'm beyond proud that we can hopefully make Black women and those who invested a lot more money.
Tobi's final swing was to realise that as Black Ballad's offering expanded into video and podcasts, she needed to hire someone else to take on the editorial reins. With Jenny Benson now heading up editorial, Tobi was free to concentrate on growing the commercial side of the business.
Do you know what? It was quite a relief. I know some people might not expect that. It was quite a relief. We started getting a little bit of commercial in, and I really enjoyed this kind of advertising aspect of Black Ballad, and I wanted to give it a go. And I think there was a little bit of me that was scared. It was like, if I fail at this, what use would I be in the company? There was that little bit of fear, but there was excitement there. I just kept telling myself, advertising is still a way for Black women to be seen and heard, and it's just as valuable, and it's just as important.
You kind of pivoted then away from editorial and kind of leadership towards commercial opportunities. Is that fair?
Yep. And then the first time I did it, like kind of full time, we ended up bringing 6 figures overall as a company, which was a massive achievement for us, right? And then once we, knew that we had a long enough runway for us all to be full time, I just said, okay, I'm going to just do it. I was really nervous at the beginning of 2021, but it ended up being our best financial year yet. And we basically Forexed what we made last year.
Incredible.
Sometimes you can't believe that, like, you started something that was just really for yourself and your friends. It's not about the money, it's about the idea, and like letting Black women be seen in such an amazing way. And it is so fulfilling, and the whole team gets to work on it, and it's just amazing. So yeah, pivoting towards head of brand partnerships and commercial, I can't lie, I really enjoy it. I don't think I'd ever go back to editorial, if I'm honest. I don't think I would.
I mean, that's really brave of you to kind of say, I think entrepreneurs have to be flexible and they have to accept reality, right? And that is, and then they have to keep going. And if they could do those 3 things and stay positive, that's the kind of recipe that I see from all the conversations that I have and all my experience, 20 years plus doing media entrepreneurship. I have to say, that's some crazy turnaround. The person who wanted to be a journalist from the age of 12, who then sets up her own business to do that because the industry won't give her a break, now doesn't want to go back into editorial. Wow, success changes us in ways that are hard to predict. Now, before we get into which of Tobi's swings she believes were the most impactful, I want to tell you a little bit about next week's guest. Paul Harris is a photographer and a living legend. Off the back of reporting on Zimbabwe's War of Independence, Paul went to LA, where in the 80s and 90s he became the go-to portrait photographer for Hollywood's A-list and beyond. Hunter S. Thompson, Richard Nixon, Muhammad Ali, Carrie Fisher and the Williams sisters. The list of people Paul photographed is remarkable, but behind that photographic portfolio also lies a pioneering business success. Paul founded one of the world's first digital photo agencies, which he went on to sell to Getty Images, blazing a trail for how all photo agencies operate today. It's an extraordinary, wide-ranging conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Now, back to Tobi. Which one of her swings does she feel had the most impact on her success? Was it, number one, rejecting the traditional journalism industry that had been so hard on her and setting up Black Ballad? Or number two, risking her audience's loyalty to put Black Ballad on a secure business footing by first of all making it a subscription business and then going out to raise money? Or number three, giving up on the personal ambition of being a journalist by hiring a head of editorial so that Tobi could concentrate on the commercial side of Black Ballad?
It's got to be the first. Without the first, none of the others exist. It's got to be the first. Because it was, in a way, it was the most bullish. It was the one that I didn't overthink. I lost sleep over the raise, and I didn't with the first decision to actually do Black Ballad in the first place. So, yeah, it's definitely the first.
So many people come up with these ideas, Tobi. So few people are brave enough to actually make them happen. Thank you so much for telling us the incredible, inspiring story of what you've built at Black Ballad. I'm a massive fan, and I can't wait to tell people that I was lucky enough to record with you back in 2022.
No, privilege is all mine. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
So that was the amazing Tobi Oredein, and my conversation with her kicked off so many thoughts in the back of my head. Tobi's a great example of what I see emerging as the next frontier of publishing, which is community subscription services. Growing up, there was nothing out there in the mags that spoke to Tobi. As she said, she couldn't see anyone like her in the media landscape, and that gave her a massive opportunity. At the time, it probably felt pretty sad. It probably felt like a bit of a threat. But the truth is, as you become a brilliant entrepreneur, you start to sense that whenever you see a gap in the marketplace, it's actually an opportunity to move in and exploit it. And instead of trying to write for the whole world, Tobi focused on super serving the needs of Black British women. And in a world of content overwhelm, that was a brilliant play. Why bother giving articles away for free when you can build a tight-knit community where people are happy to give you money every month? The secret is the content that Tobi's making feels like a necessity to that community, as they can't get it anywhere else. And in the best communities, those readers, those people that are using the content, they build relationships with the rest of the people around them, those folks that are turning up to the events with them, those people who are commenting and sharing on the articles. And of course, that subscription product where you're reading articles actually becomes a brand that brings people together and helps build real life friendships and relationships. It becomes a must-have product in a world of different things you can pay for that you can give or take. And engaged communities like a two-way relationship. Yes, those readers love what Tobi's created, but their enthusiasm and passion also fuels and supports Tobi to carry on despite the challenges and the setbacks. Another big take home for me is Tobi shows us how necessary it is as an entrepreneur to embrace acceptance and flexibility. Her dream was to be a journalist, and she fought, working for nothing, travelling in every day, even doing a weekend job to pay for her turning out for free as an intern. And no matter how talented she was, how hard she worked, she couldn't get the right gig. So in the end, she had to actually start her own publication. Amazing, right? She did it. But it became obvious to Tobi that to save and grow that small business, she had to change roles to be a salesperson, not just a writer. That's really tough because she had to shift her whole identity, the whole reason she was doing it. But the truth is, to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be flexible. And you have to understand that if you really want success, you have to put yourself second for some points, and you have to go where the demands of the marketplace are taking you. And finally, in the mainstream media world of the UK, it's so much harder for Tobi to achieve what she has with her accent, with her background, with the colour of her skin, compared to a city boy who can raise X million for their new tech startup. What Tobi is doing is an example to somebody like me that no matter how hard it can seem to break in, to be accepted, to be part of the media landscape, sometimes what you need to do is just go out there and make remarkable content consistently for a group of people who aren't being looked after properly. That's what Tobi's done, and she's changed the media landscape in the UK, I think, forever with what she's doing. And I think you should all go check out Black Ballad, subscribe, and see what a brilliant subscription media business for a dedicated community looks like in 2023. Hopefully this has inspired you guys to go out there and build something really unique and valuable yourselves. Thank you, Tobi, and thanks everybody for listening. The Big Swing podcast is produced in association with the amazing Spirit Studios. Our executive producer is Fred Casella. Our sound designer is Will Horrocks. And The Big Swing was created by me, Sam Barcroft.